Today we'll be covering the case of Sherri Dally. It's easily anyone's worst nightmare. A young mother of two dropped her kids off at school, went shopping, walked out of the store, and was never seen again. A month-long investigation led to the discovery of a crumbling marriage and her battered body found in a ravine. With all signs pointing to Sherri's husband, could he prove he had nothing to do with it? Sherri Dally was expected home by noon on May 6, 1996. When Michael Dally got home later that day to find several parents still waiting to drop off their kids at daycare, he knew something was wrong. So Sherri ran a daycare out of their home, and being the head of the business obviously meant she never missed a day of work. Yet today, she was nowhere to be found. Later that afternoon, Michael called 911 to officially report her missing, claiming she hadn't been seen since dropping the boys off at school around 8:30 that morning. The police told him he would have to wait 72 hours or for a suspicious incident to officially file a report. So the parents at the daycare offered to help search for Sherri in the meantime. Within an hour, the volunteers found Sherri's abandoned van in the local Target parking lot. It was unlocked with keys in the ignition and her purse and groceries still inside, and the police quickly showed up to investigate. Friends and family volunteered to help pass out flyers throughout the community while detectives asked the store for their security tapes and questioned employees. Sherri's face was plastered on the news and her case was reported all over the county, asking if anybody had any information on Sherri's whereabouts. A security guard mentioned seeing Sherri in the store earlier that morning when she'd stopped to chat with the head of security, who was also a friend of hers. The security tape showed Sherri leaving the store at 9:22 a.m., heading towards the parking lot and out of view from the cameras. Investigators learned that Sherri and Michael had both grown up in the area, so a lot of people in the community had known them for years. Michael was described by friends as Sherri's first real boyfriend, and that they'd been married for 12 years now. Sherri's mom said Sherri thought the sun rose and set with Michael, and she would do just about anything for him. After bringing him home to the family, Michael Dally eventually won everyone over and an engagement came soon after. But friends also said that Sherri and Michael's marriage had been in trouble for a while, and it was no secret that there was another woman in the picture. Enter Diane Hahn. So Miss Diana was Michael's co-worker and also a former model. Apparently, the two of them did not try to keep their relationship private. Co-workers knew about it, family knew about it, and rumor has it, Sherri had recently learned about it as well. Sherri had tried valiantly to fix their marriage, but Michael had already moved on. When investigators learned Sherri had told her mom 2 months before she disappeared that she was officially going to divorce him, they wondered if this was the final chip in the glass for Michael. After learning about his Princess Diana, the police went to speak with Michael again that evening, but funny enough, he wasn't home. They tried calling him up a few times that night, but no one ever picked up. It was weird to investigators that a husband whose wife was currently missing wouldn't be waiting anxiously by the phone to hear any news. The next day, a witness told detectives she'd seen a woman matching Sherri's description getting arrested at Target. She claimed to have seen Sherri opening her car door when a woman suddenly approached her from behind. The two spoke briefly to each other. Sherri turned around and the woman placed handcuffs on Sherri. She walked Sherri over to a teal Nissan and placed her in the back of it like an officer would and drove off. The detectives were shook, and the police department definitely hadn't gotten any new teal squad cars lately. Sherri's friends all told police that they needed to speak to Diana Hahn, so the investigators made a pit stop at her house to interrogate her. Much to their surprise, they were greeted at the door by a scantily clad Diana, who appeared to have just rolled out of bed. Following her was a sleepy Michael Dally wearing only a pair of shorts, so they asked the two to put on some clothes and to come down to the police station for questioning. The police asked Diana to describe her whereabouts on the morning of May 6th. Diana said she'd spent the morning riding her bike alone and that she had nothing to do with Sherri's disappearance. However, the cops soon got a call from one of Diana's co-workers saying that she had arrived an hour late to work that morning and had scratches on her forehead. The police waltzed back into the room and asked Diana to pull her hair back, and sure enough, there were 2 distinct scratches. Diana then claimed she'd fallen off her bike, but the detectives could see the scratches had clearly been made by fingernails. They took pictures of the scratches, but in the end, they had to let Diana and Michael go with no evidence to hold them on. The female officer the witness saw had blonde hair, wore a tan pantsuit and sunglasses, and drove a teal Nissan Altima. None of those elements describe Diana. Diana was brunette, and she didn't own a teal Nissan like the witness mentioned. Teal was not a common colored car on the road, and the investigators had a theory that it was a rental. So 2 detectives headed into town to talk to the local car rental places. At one shop, the detectives asked the woman behind the counter if Michael Dally had ever rented a car from them. And the lady got on the computer and told them no. So then they were like, well, what about Diana Hahn? And the lady went, yeah, Diana rented a car on May 5th, you know, the day before Sherri disappeared. And detectives looked at each other and were like, oh, but Diana denied renting the car and claimed the signature on the rental agreement for the teal Nissan wasn't hers and that someone had forged it. For some reason, no one at the car agency could positively identify Diana as the person who had rented the car either. A look inside the recently returned car left investigators with an uneasy feeling in their stomachs when they spotted a brownish-colored stain on the carpet of the back seat. They called in our friends, the forensic experts, to perform tests on said brownish stains, which tested positive for hemoglobin. And lots of it. With DNA samples from Sherri's parents, the forensic scientists were able to confirm that the worst had happened to Sherri in the back of that car. In the back of the car, scientists also found 5 strands of what appeared to be human hair. They examined the strands under a microscope and discovered the hairs weren't actually hairs at all, but were fibers, like the type of fiber they'd used to make wigs out of. Once again, Diana and Michael were picked up in the wee-woo wagon and carted down to the station. Diana insisted she was innocent and at one point asked if she could speak to Michael, so the detectives stepped out of the room to watch. The detective described a very kooky scene as Michael attempted to hype up Diana, telling her they didn't have anything on them and that they'd be released soon. Diana was arrested, but they unfortunately had to release her again without being charged like the slippery little eel she was. But by now, the news of Sherri's disappearance and Diana's arrest had hit the media and spread like wildfire. Another lucky break came when a woman who worked at a nearby wig shop gave a ring-a-ding-ding to the boys in blue. She recognized Diana's face from the news and said Diana had come into her shop and asked for something to make her look official and like a cop. The owner said Diana mentioned wanting to scare someone. Diana's bank records showed she'd bought a suit, shoes, crazy glue, matches, large trash bags, lighter fluid, and an axe. Another co-worker of Diana's later came forward and mentioned Diana was into witchcraft, and that right before Sherri's disappearance, she told a co-worker about planning to do a human sacrifice for her boyfriend's birthday. The boyfriend being Michael, and the birthday being May 21st. But the police found that detail quite noteworthy. And finally, on June 1st, a woman's shoe and sunglasses were found at the edge of a canyon on the outskirts of Ventura County. One of Sherri's friends positively identified the clothes as Sherri's, and the investigators called her mom to let her know that the remains of a woman had been found before it hit the 6 o'clock news. Sherri's dental records helped confirm what they already knew, and her bones would also paint a picture of the immense suffering she'd gone through. But then something caught one of the examiner's eyes. Embedded in the right side of her jaw was a tiny piece of metal that they were able to determine was a tooth from a serrated blade. On August 1st, officers showed up at Diana's work to arrest her and charge her with the slaying. Her boss remembered she walked out of the building calmly and quietly that day. Michael would later be arrested on November 16th after Diana's phone records on May 6th showed her making multiple calls to him that day. The prosecution believed Michael had been the puppet master and that Diana had done his dirty work for him. All eyes were on the puppet master and his dummy when they each went to trial. Diana went first, and her lawyers alleged that Michael had taken advantage of Diana's blind love for him and manipulated her into doing whatever he wanted, which meant they did technically have to admit that Diana was the one who done the crime, so it was already not looking great for her. Michael, however, maintained his innocence and claimed he was at work at the time and had no involvement with the incident. But the prosecution believed that in order to avoid an expensive divorce, a messy custody battle, and most likely child support, Michael hatched a plan to rid himself of Sherri and inherit her life insurance policy as the cherry on top. Multiple witnesses took the stand, including Michael's former employees, friends, and family, who all had plenty of stories to tell about the adulterer and his girlfriend. "It's all him" was a quote from a Vaughn's employee that seemed to echo what everyone else had already been saying. Altogether, 30 Ventura law officers had worked on the case, and 125 witnesses testified, each helping paint a very clear picture of who was responsible. On September the 27th, 1997, Diana was found guilty in the first degree and was sentenced to life without parole. On April 6, 1998, Michael was also found guilty in the first degree and joined Diana with a matching sentence of life without parole as well. This case just goes to show that trying to outsmart the police will only reveal how thick-skulled you actually are. Until next time, stay safe, wash your hands, and don't forget to floss your teeth. Ta-ta!